I'm Sarah. Welcome to my new YouTube channel. I have a blog also associated with this channel. It's called Altar and Ego, just like up here. And I'll put links to it below in the description box and tell you a little bit more about that blog in today's video description box as well. I hope that you'll take a look, read it at your leisure, and if you have any thoughts or comments, disagreements, any agreements, anything, please comment. Please, put a shout out and let me know what you might think. Maybe your experiences have been different. So my YouTube channel, Altar and Ego, is, along with my blog, all about church and mental health. There's so much overlap in those two things, those two categories. I think just doesn't really get talked about very much. But when it does get talked about, it seems to be in a negative way. Like if you are a Christian and you have a struggle and it might be something related to mental health, then you better get down to the altar, pray more, read the Bible more. Definitely don't forget to read Job and Psalms, because David, he sinned with Bathsheba and he was depressed. And Job, we really don't know what he did, but God was just testing him. And so maybe this is a test. So we hear these same familiar refrains, just about as familiar as the same old songs we sing in church. If you go to an evangelical church, you know what I'm talking about. But we hear the same stuff all the time, the same refrains. And it's really frustrating for those of us who don't have just a test, or maybe didn't do anything that's, causing some sort of consequence to be, drawn down on us. Sometimes we are in those things, like everybody else is too, but the way that we deal with them or process them is amplified because of our brain chemistry, because of old soul wounds, because of childhood history. And I know it sounds funny, it sounds really pop psychology, to say that, but you know what, it's true. And there was a time when I used to think the same thing, like what is this soul wound, childhood wounds? Like, come on, just because my parents got divorced 3 times doesn't mean that I have any particular wounds. And then sit with that for a minute and think about it, and think, what, it makes more sense that maybe there would be a wound, something that impacts you throughout the rest of your life because of something like that, than that there wouldn't be. So what I like to talk about is how those two things combine, how they align and disalign, because the truth is that sometimes nothing we read in the Bible is going to fix what's wrong here. Sometimes it's brain chemistry. Sometimes, no matter how much therapy, whether it be Christian therapy or not, how much pastoral counseling, how much whatever that you do, okay, time with God, whatever, it's not gonna fix it. Not because God can't fix it, or because he won't fix it, or because he doesn't want to fix it, but as we know, with a lot of situations in life, God uses other means to fix things. Medication, physical therapy, chemotherapy. I know someone now whose husband is undergoing chemotherapy for a type of cancer, and he had a stem cell transplant. And some people are very against that type of thing if they don't know all the details of it, or the truth about things like that. But I wouldn't tell my friend, hey, don't do that. Don't help him. God will heal him. God uses those things sometimes, and sometimes he doesn't. And sometimes he lets us stay in our suffering. We just don't know, okay? But it's incumbent upon us as human beings to use every opportunity that we have given to us by God. These are graces. These are graces God has given us to be able to function in this world at the highest caliber that we can be, to what he made us to be. So that's really what I talk about mostly when I'm discussing things. I oftentimes do write about my own experiences. Sometimes it's something that's happening at the moment. It may be something I grabbed from a journal from years before. It may be something that I just remembered from before. It might be just a thought or a commentary on something. But the point is that as Christians, as followers of Christ, whether you are or whether you're not, okay, it's incumbent upon all of us to get the health care that we need, to get the soul care that we need, to get the spiritual care that we need. And, as a born-again believer in Jesus Christ, I believe and I know that he is the way, the truth, and the life, the only way to salvation, the only way to a renewed, restored relationship with God. And so, of course, that is what I'm going to talk about, right? But I also know that as a human being who has a lot of trauma from the past, family history of different types of mental and psychological illnesses and situations, I know that I have a problem with my brain chemistry. And I also have a problem with the way that my soul and my brain metabolize, for lack of a better term, I'm using Dr. Henry Cloud's term, okay, metabolizes grief. So, just to be very basic, the typical grief process we hear about is the acronym DABDA, right? We have a loss, and that loss is what we're going to grieve, right? We need to grieve it. It's the first stage is denial, then anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And the hope is that acceptance means, okay, I'm not going through this process anymore. Things will come up from time to time, but I've grieved this and I can move forward now. Well, some people, we go denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and we just stay there. And for some of us extra lucky ones, okay, the anger stage isn't anger outward at whoever or whatever or situation that may have hurt us or whatever might have played into it, the loss, triggered the loss, or anger at emotional anger, just, anger that it happened at all, or for what might not happen now, for, again, the loss. Some of us turn that anger inwards, and that is also known as depression. So some of us lucky ones, we get an extra helping of that depression and then get walloped with it a couple of times. And then, of course, the grief process is not linear. It's not a bell curve either. It's all over the place, and you can go back and forth 15,000 times and still be in denial. It really all comes down to how we're made, what God allows us to go through, what he may be planning in our way. Not in our way in a bad way, but part of his plan for us to renew us, to bring us closer to him, to show us areas of our own weakness. But it's also, medical concerns and psychological concerns. And that's something that I really find so important. I know people don't like to talk about that. A lot of Christians that I know, even really well-respected people that I really respect, have told me, okay, fine, take your medicine, but get in the Word. And it's like, but if that's the case, why can't I get out of bed every day? And why can somebody who's done the same thing or in the same position or who, doesn't have anything different than me, how come they can function just fine? How come they can feed their kid? How come they can go to work? And how come I can't even brush my teeth? Like, it's debilitating. There's got to be something wrong. And there is. And that's something that's so important to discuss and not to feel ashamed of. And most importantly, I think, not to believe. Because if we catch ourselves believing these types of well-meaning but perhaps slightly uninformed statements, then we won't get the help we need. And we might not even know that there's help out there. We don't even know something's wrong. You sure wouldn't, feel crazy heart palpitations and not go to the doctor and say, oh, something's wrong. You wouldn't do that if you had digestive problems or all of a sudden you couldn't see. We go to the doctor with a sore throat. I take my son to the doctor. He's almost 7. If he has a lot of snots, like they're the little things that we go to the doctors for. But yet when we have something that's affecting us so greatly, we just assume that there must be something off base. I have a really great therapist, and she told me that one of her professors in college made a comment along these lines. It's not an exact quote, but this is basically a paraphrase. When we have medical problems, medical issues, those things are often and typically very apparent. But when we have a psychological or mental health concern, that's usually, if not almost always, viewed as a moral failure. So that gave me a lot to think about, and this is a professor talking about this, somebody who's learned, who's got, this behind there, and who has obviously some sort of understanding of what the moral compass or moral code would be, or he wouldn't be mentioning it. I don't know who this guy is or if he's a Christian, but I do know that he's right. That he's right. My experience tells me that he's right. I hope that your experience has been better than mine, but if it is anything like mine, I hope that you'll comment down below. I hope you'll share your experience. I hope you'll check out my blog. Comment there too. You know, maybe you're somebody who doesn't agree with me, and I would love to know more about it. If you have any books that you've read, or any, you can see I like to read, or any websites or whatever that you know have helped you along the way, please do mention those. I'd love to read them or watch them, videos. And we'll be talking more. I'm going to do another video here in a few minutes, and I'll talk a little bit more about the, I guess, the top 10 things that a major depressive wishes that other people knew about them. So thanks for stopping by, and we will talk more soon. Take care.